Welcome to the Isn't That Rich podcast. I'm your host, Jill Franks.
And I'm Ashley McVicker, and we are here to help you get your finances in order this year.
This is the first episode of a two-part series of how to take inventory of your finances.
Yeah, Jill, have you ever taken inventory of your finances before?
This is the first year, Ashley, that I've really sat down and gotten clear and taken a financial inventory. And the only reason why that happened for me is because of what we're doing at the bank. And one thing that we really worked hard on this year was a mastermind class. And the first one we did was Smart Women Finish Rich. It was a mastermind, a women-only mastermind. And one of the parts of it was really to sit down and take a financial inventory. And so I did it. And what about you, Ashley? How did you find that helpful this year, or did you take financial inventory this year?
I found it so helpful. I think money is one of those things that you think about often and we talk about every day, or it's just something that's always going on in your life. But do you really know where your money is? Do you know all of the things you own? Do you know what your net worth is? All of these questions that we'll dig into. And really the way you find that out is through a financial inventory. And so the first way to do that is to just find your stuff. And I didn't even realize that that's what you need to do. Just find your stuff.
And what better time than a new year to sit down and clean house and get all your stuff in one spot?
Yeah. Like, do you know how many bank accounts you have? Do you know what your investment accounts look like? Do you know how they're doing?
Exactly. So I think that this episode, we're going to tell you exactly the documentation you need to gather to kick off your inventory planning for the new year.
Yeah. So after listening to this episode, we believe you're going to walk away having a really good idea about how knowledgeable you are or aren't about your finances. And the best way to do that this year is to go into the year with your eyes wide open. So let's figure out where we're starting so we can get a clear vision of where we want to go with our finances.
All right, so let's get into it. So essentially what financial inventory is housekeeping, right? So housekeeping, a great way for couples to start working on their finances together. It might take you a while to do this. I mean, Do you know where all your stuff is, Ashley?
No, and I had to find it. And it's not hard. I mean, maybe for some people it might be a little bit hard just depending on how much you own or don't own. But after you find everything, you're going to feel like, okay, I feel so much better.
Yes.
Knowing where my finances are. You wouldn't believe how much that weighs on you. Mm-hmm. And so just finding your stuff really.
Yeah, it clears
the
out.
First step in housekeeping.
Yeah. And
housekeeping.
How often do you, when you're thinking about your finances, you have it up in your head, but nobody else knows what's going on. Right. So think about being in a family where they might need to know some of this pertinent financial information. They have no idea where to go to find it. So essentially what we're going to talk about today is a way for you to really get organized, find your things, put them in a safe spot for your family. Your family will know where they are. So if they need that information, they can access it. So the first thing we're going to talk about is exactly what we just mentioned, is finding out what your stuff is. And how we're going to do that, Ashley, is to put your important documentation into files.
So easy. I think everything is online these days and it kind of makes things a little bit hard. Go to the store, buy a bunch of different files, label them what we're going to tell you to label them, and you will have these in one spot. And I promise you, you will feel light as a feather.
Yes.
Knowing that all of your stuff is in these files, you're going to feel great. So Jill, what's the first thing we should put?
So your first hanging folder that you are going to have is going to be labeled tax returns. Now, we recommend having on hand, printed out, access to the last 7 years of your tax returns.
For auditing purposes at IRS.
Because if you ever get audited, you want to say, here you go, this is my stuff, I have all my ducks in a row, right? So with your tax returns, you want to have your W-2 forms, your 1099s, and all the tax returns you filed for each year. And every year gets its own separate file.
Little file in the hanging file.
Right. So you have 7 folders, one for each year, inside of a hanging folder labeled tax returns. What's the next one? So your next hanging file is labeled.
Next hanging file is going to be your retirement accounts. So keep all your retirement account statements So if you have a 401k or an IRA, you should have two separate files. So just the same thing with the taxes, just split them up. Keep quarterly statements in here. Keep your sign-up package from your company retirement account. So I think that's always interesting to look back on. You know, when you first start a job, you don't really know what you're signing up for. If you have a 401k, you have no idea what kind of retirement. You don't even really know a lot about retirement at that point in your life, probably. We had some conversations about that yesterday, but...
Well, yeah. So yesterday, we had a new employee start, and he's actually in the marketing team. We're super excited to have him join our team.
So excited.
We sat down with him because today he's sitting down with our advisor who is going to select his 401k program for him.
And there's a lot of options. I remember sitting down and being like, I don't know, you tell me. And they're like, well, you tell me what's best for you. And I'm like, I don't know. So keeping that first, set of paperwork, that sign up package with everything about your retirement accounts is so important. So you know where you stand with your investments, and when you want to change, and you have to stay on top of those things because no one's going to make you do it.
Right.
We know that.
We talk about this all the time with your 401k plan. Like if you go in and you set a percentage that you want to put into your 401k plan and then just set it and forget it, you're going to be paying that much into your retirement account for forever, as long as you're with that employee or employer rather.
Right.
So you could be sitting, say your employer does a 401k match up to 4%, and you say, okay, well, I'm going to at least put 4% of my paycheck into this 401k because I know it's 100% matched. Well, eventually when you're making more money down the road and you want to save more and more for your retirement, you never go back and change that. No. You'll be so disappointed with yourself because you could be earning so much more return on that investment.
Yeah. And I think the best way to remind yourself that you have, you picked the 4% or the 6% to go in there is to just have your file folders ready. So, okay, actually, what am I contributing? I can just open my file drawer, look at it and say, okay, I know I need to up this. I need to make an appointment with my advisor. So that's a simple reason why you should have all your stuff. Have your ducks in a row, right?
Have your stuff on hand. Know where you're at.
All right, Jill, what's the next thing? And this one's really, people don't think about this one a lot, but it's...
No, so your next hanging file is going to be labeled Social Security. So this is where you want to put your most recent Social Security benefit statement. If you don't know what your benefit statement looks like, you can log on to the Social Security website. It's www.ssa.gov. And you can sign up for a My Social Security account. And so this was really interesting. Once I went in there, made my own account, you can actually type in the year you plan on retiring and see how much you would be making or in your Social Security check.
Yeah.
And it is mind-blowing. Like, I think I looked at mine the other day. It was like $18,000 a year.
It's nothing, you guys.
And so knowing when you can retire and how much you'll be receiving from Social Security, you can't count on it. So just knowing can get you further.
Right. And we talk about this all the time. Like, if your head's in the sand and you just think one day you're going to retire and the government's going to take care of you and Social Security is going to take care of you, like, it's simply not. And that's the truth right there. I mean, you can go to that website, ssa.gov. and look.
Yeah, it's not a secret that's available for you to access. So go there, make an account, and then print off your current benefit statement. Put it in the file, and you'll be good to go.
Perfect.
Ashley, what's the next hanging folder?
Okay, so the next hanging folder is our investment account. So I know I already talked about our retirement accounts, but that's going to be more your 401k. So that's your work retirement accounts. These are investment accounts. So if you're day trading on TD Ameritrade, you have mutual funds, any kind of brokerage accounts for investments, all of those need to go in that folder.
And I want to just make it really clear is that every single account that you open, whether it's a stock or it's a mutual fund or whatever it is, they all get their own file within your hanging folder.
Yeah. So what's really interesting about this one, and we're going to talk about this more in the next episode, but it was really cool for me to look at some of my investments and see where I started at. So where, what I purchased at a certain price and where that price is now. And so I really enjoy that about that file, because I can go back and look and just see, oh, I've made like a decent amount of money off this stock or these mutual funds. Or it's really cool when you start digging into some of that stuff. And there's a lot to learn about it. Jill and I were listening to another podcast about investing this morning, but yeah, I just think that's really cool to look back in your file and just say, I bought, this stock at this price and now it's here, it split, or.
Well, to have a clear picture of your history. Yeah, I think it's awesome. So keeping them in these files will help with that timeline.
And I think a lot of time with investing, people just say, set it and forget it. And I don't think that's the best advice always. I think you should be really hands-on with your investments and looking at things and making sure, you're in the right programs and investments. And so that's a great way to do that.
But now, I don't know if you have this problem, Ashley, but when I log into an investment account, there are so many security steps that I'm jumping through all of these hoops. Jumping through all these hoops to get to my actual account. And so that deters me from actually logging in and keeping track of everything. Yeah. So rather than it taking me 5 minutes to go look in my file cabinet with all of these printed out for my quarterly reports, right? I just don't do it. And so if you get in the habit of doing it once a quarter, printing it out, putting in these files,
you can look back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just know where you're at.
So the next hanging file folder is going to be savings and checking accounts. So every single bank account that you have, whether it's a checking or a savings account, is going to get its own file within this hanging file. And inside those individual folders, you're going to print out your monthly bank statements for each account, and you're going to keep them in their own file. Now, I know a lot of us choose to do e-statements, and that's totally fine, but I want you to realize that every bank only probably posts the last 7 months or up to a year online of your actual e-bank statements. So once you do have access to that bank statement, I'm sure you get an alert that your bank statement is now available. Go in, print it out, put it in this file folder so you can look back. Whether it's 4 years, 5 years, you can keep a clear history of where you're at with your finances inside your savings and checking accounts. Banks are required to keep them on file up to 7 years, but for your own sake of having to call into the bank and have them print you that report, probably charge you a fee for printing that. If you could just print them out immediately after you receive that bank statement, you'll be way better off.
Alrighty, so the next hanging folder is going to be your household accounts. So this is going to be your house title, home improvement receipts, your mortgage, so all the things that has to do with your house. And then if you're renting as well, you want to keep a copy of your lease, a receipt of your security deposit, and a receipt for your rental payments. So you have all of those on file. And I think this is a really important folder.
Oh my gosh.
Your house is so important.
Thinking, and when it says home improvement receipts, so I think back to all the warranties I have. Like when we were building our house or remodeling our house, we had warranties for everything. I mean, I'm talking about every single faucet.
Oh my gosh, and you just want to throw it in the trash.
And you want to throw it in the trash, but it is so important to hang out. I mean, we are replacing 4 faucets this year. And our house is only 7 years old from when we remodel it. But if we would have saved that and had a place to put that, we could look back and find, the information that we needed. Maybe it would be under warranty. I don't know, but we don't have that information.
Because and then you're mad now because you're like, I have this faucet and I have to pay for it to get fixed. And I probably, if I would have kept that dang paperwork in my hanging folders.
And it's also important too, because when you're doing these improvements on your house, when you go to sell your house and you show that you've made these improvements, it ups the value of your home. So you want to make sure that you can prove that you've put this much money, your equity in your house, to prove
that's huge. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's huge. And I want to talk about the renting side of things too, because how many renters out there have just, you don't keep good records of whether you wire it or Venmo to your...
Yeah, because you don't think it's permanent. You're like, I don't own anything, so this doesn't matter. But
Or you haven't received your damage deposit back. I mean,
ouch. Everyone wants that back.
Right. And so it's important to show exactly when you paid things, get a receipt from your landlord every single payment. And if they don't offer it, request it.
I think another reason you should keep your renting receipts, all that jazz. And we've talked about this, maybe not on the podcast, but definitely throughout the bank. We talk about how if you don't have credit, this can help you
earn credit history.
Mm-hmm. Because it proves that you can pay something.
Yes,
you can
this
pay a
is
bill.
so true.
So that's a really great reason. If you're a renter, keep your stuff.
Yeah. So all your credit is showing that you
are able to pay stuff
back
by the terms
and consistently.
Yeah.
And so a rental history can help with that.
Definitely can help with that. Household accounts, very important. Don't you want to know where your mortgage is? Don't you want to know what you're paying? Don't you want to know what your interest is? Like, I think people just get into situations and just have no idea what they're paying. And so this is a great way to check in on your stuff. And Jill, we talk about this and we'll talk about it more in the next episode. Just last year, the interest rates went so low and so many people were refinancing their houses.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good that you know like where your stuff is and what you're paying. So if you need to refinance, you can do that.
Yeah.
You can make those decisions really quickly instead of like, oh, I'll get around to it one day. Well, the Fed ain't waiting on you.
No, that's right. And just thinking about this. So like if you took out a mortgage, do you know whether you're paying a variable rate mortgage or are you paying the
fixed rate? Yeah.
Fixed rate? Because if you chose a variable rate mortgage, like there might be some people that would have, if they would have been keeping an eye on things when they were seeing the Fed raising rates consistently and aggressively this year, they could have refinanced quickly, got into a fixed rate and wouldn't be seeing these astronomical rises of interest rates on their home mortgage.
Right.
So it's just important to keep track of that. And then you can see if you need to refinance, even if you're in a good rate and we go to a different market, like if it's dropping and you need to get out of this high interest rate that you took out today for a loan, you can, if you're keeping track and you're printing and keeping these files and these statements, you can always look at them.
Great. So what's next?
Oh gosh, the next hanging file is credit card debt.
Dun, dun, dun.
And when we say credit card debt, label it with a capital D-E-T because we want it to be a reminder, like you should be consistently looking at this and working on it, right?
Especially credit card debt.
Yeah. So every single credit card that you have, you need to make its own separate file and you need to print out your statements every month. And we talk about how often credit card companies or purchases we make might make a mistake and charge us on our credit card. And so if you're not printing those out regularly and putting them and just glancing at them to make sure everything's
okay. Well, it just happened to me.
What happened, Ashley?
Well, it was my fault, but not really because my automatic payment was supposed to come out on a specific day. And it was like getting really late at night. And I mean, I'm on top of my finances. I work at a bank. I got to be on it. And so I'm like, my payment hasn't gone through. This is so weird. And so I freaked out and I paid. I was like, pay in full. Like I just did it. And then it took my payment the next day. And so I got like double charged. And I don't know. It's just, you got to stay on your stuff because I didn't know that they took my money. And so then I had to call them and it was a big deal. But like credit cards, I mean, it's a loan, it's a consumer loan. And so like you have to be careful with how you're spending your money on that stuff and take care of it. And
yeah, just be mindful.
Be mindful of it.
And even though it might not be on purpose, there might be charges. A company, everybody in a retail, especially right now, everybody in a retail store is doing their best, but mistakes happen, especially with the holidays and things. Transactions like crazy, you just want to make sure that you're charged correctly. So
yeah,
printing that bank statement out or the credit card statement rather is a great way to do so every month.
Yeah. And I think if you're someone that's in credit card debt And we know how high credit card interest rates can be.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, print out that paper and look at how much extra money they're charging you for you to be borrowing their money.
And everything's negotiable. Like, when was the last time you sat down with your credit card company and negotiated your interest rate? Like, if that's
I didn't know you could do that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Nothing is set in stone, right? Like, so that's something to keep in mind too. Everything is negotiable. You always want to be looking at that. And if you do have to carry a balance on your credit card, work with your credit card company. Mm-hmm. So printing that out, keeping a file, knowing where you stand, it's always amazing.
Yeah, and I think people don't want to know where they stand with debt sometimes. Oh. But you just can't do that. I mean, just put it in the file folder and know, like, hey, I owe this money.
Yeah. We talk about that a lot too with like people overdrafting on their bank accounts too. Like, you swipe it and you just pray that it goes through. But I mean, we just want to make sure that you know what your limit is. You want to make sure that you know where you stand. So you just be mindful.
All right. So speaking of debt, the next thing we're going to make a file folder for is your loans. So that's your college loans, car loans, personal loans, any kind of loans that you have taken out. And each debt, of course, should have its own file containing the loan note and your payment records. So, you've got a car payment, put it in there. I remember that. I was paying off my car, and I was in an auto pay program, and I guess auto pay stopped after 1 year, which I think is absolutely so silly, because why wouldn't you just want to keep taking my money? Well, I didn't pay for my car 1 month, and I had to deal with that, and I had to have the statements for that. And so just having a place to put all that and say, yes, look, I do pay my bills. I was paying my bills, and it ended up getting figured out. But
yeah, but having that payment record is nice.
Having that payment record is nice. You are right, Jill.
Yeah, for sure. The next file folder is the insurance file folder.
Woo!
So this contains, there's so many types of insurance, but I want to touch on a few of the personal insurance that we deal with a lot. So health insurance gets its own file. Your life insurance, if you have a policy, gets its own file. Your homeowners or renters insurance gets its own file. Car insurance and your disability. Long-term care, if you're of that age and want to start purchasing long-term care insurance, that also gets its own file. So you want to keep the policy and all your payment records of your insurance.
That's a lot.
It is.
I think insurance is one of the most important things. Like, if you had to keep a file folder, that's definitely top 3, because man, everybody knows there's a lot with insurance.
And you don't need it until you need it, but when you need it now, right?
You're so thankful for it.
Exactly. So keeping those forms printed out, your policy number, everything you need in one place, printed out. If you were in a car accident and your husband had to run and grab your insurance folder, where would he look, right? Got to know exactly where to look.
If you're sick and you're going to the doctor and you get a bill, you just make sure you have all of your stuff.
Well, I just think it's such a blessing to set your family up for if something should happen, right? So if you're in the hospital and you cannot find, or you're not able to tell somebody this information, if they have, right?
Oh my gosh.
So you want to be able to find that, or have your family member be able to find that.
Where's a great way to keep stuff?
So a great place to store your important information is everplans.com. I used it. I subscribed to it this year, and you're allowed to add somebody to your Everplans account, and they have their own separate login. And the only way they get access to it is if something were to happen to you, which is kind of cool. It's got it all set up. If something happens, it activates, and it gets sent to them.
So this has like all of your, just everything you want to put in there, like anything, like passwords or
it'll
your will.
So think about that. If something were to happen to you, your will, your living trust, your insurance policies, all your passwords to your social media accounts.
Weird.
Like, it's a place to keep all of that information safe and secure, and be able to pass it on to who you would want to have access to that should something happen to you. So it's a great place to keep that information. Speaking of will and trust, our next file folder is
your family will or trust. So in this file folder, you need to keep your most recent will or living trust, along with the contact details of the attorney that set it up. That is so important. Put their business card in there.
That's right. Drop in the business card.
Yeah.
They'll know who to call. It'll all be good.
Oh my gosh, your will and your trust, so important. We learn a lot about that. And we can talk about that another time, but wow.
Yeah.
So important.
The next file folder we want to have is the children's account. So if you're a parent and you have children, you want to hold all of their information within this file folder. So you are going to have, like, if you opened any 529 college saving plans, or you opened a savings account for them, or you have checking any kind of information, financial information, maybe you took out a savings bond for your child. This is where you're going to put that information. So every account, once again, gets its own file folder within your child's.
Yeah. And I think that's great too, because you can just pull this file out and teach your kids about finances.
Yes, I think it's awesome. And to start young with your kids.
Absolutely. What did we say the other day, that you learn your spending patterns in the first 7 years of your life?
Yes.
Is that what you told me?
So all of your spending habits are ingrained. So you develop all of those before the age of 7.
Isn't that wild?
So just think how much influence you have between then. I mean, it's crazy. Sitting down to even just like while you're paying your bills, sitting your kid at a chair next to you and just speaking out loud what you're doing and how much things cost. Like, this is so we can keep our lights on. So every month I have to look at this bill, and this is why I tell you to turn the lights off or unplug the toaster. I don't know, but it is why setting those habits and the behaviors for your children is so important at a young age.
All right. So we're getting down to the last couple of files. We're almost done finding all of our stuff. So this one is super important. Your miscellaneous important documents. Okay. So your marriage license, people, how many times do you need that, Jill, when you got to get a new passport or whatever, so you need your marriage license, divorce certificate if you're divorced, death certificate of somebody that died in your family. I don't know, any kind of miscellaneous important document, throw it in this file. And I can't tell you how many times people walk into the bank and they're like, this happened the other day, I need to change my name. We're like, oh, did you get married? Congratulations. Nope, I got divorced. Oh, we have to have that divorce paperwork.
Yes.
Can you please get that out for us? So this is just a place to keep those important documents.
And I can speak from experience. When I was married, we were married in Florida, and, I thought, okay, they ask you, you turn in your marriage certificate or your marriage license, and they ask you how many copies you would like to receive of your marriage license. I cannot stress enough, if you're about to get married or thinking about getting married, get several marriage certificates or marriage license. You want copies of that thing. Every single place that you have to go to change your name, whether it's sending in to get a new passport, like Ashley mentioned, if you want to go to the Social Security office and change your name, all of those places require their own separate document. So you don't get it back. They keep it, and you need a separate copy for every place. So I wish I would have printed 20 copies and just keep it in this folder. 20 copies in this folder. Same with your birth certificate. Think about how many times.
I don't even know where mine's at.
Oh, gosh.
I got to find it and put it in the file.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and all your kids' birth certificates. I think about all of the years of just growing up, and you need your birth certificate for going to get your passport, or you're got to get your license, and just there's all these government rules you got to.
But having copies on hand is very important of all of those documents. The next one, and we'll get into this more in our next episode because this is a series, one of two episodes, is your financial inventory planner. So this folder will contain a file of a worksheet that we're going to create together. We'll tell you everything you need to have inside that worksheet of your inventory of what we just gathered. So every single document, all your bank accounts, we're going to keep a financial inventory on this worksheet.
And I love mine. Don't you love yours?
Oh, I love it.
It makes me so happy when I open my little booklet, my little financial inventory planner, and I just know, okay, this is where I stand. Hey, I'm doing better than I thought I was.
So what a financial inventory planner is, it essentially tells you what your net worth is.
Yeah.
And
can you believe you have a net worth?
I know, everybody does.
Yeah, and I always just thought it was something that rich and famous people had. But everybody has a net worth, and we'll talk about that in the next episode. But you need to know what your net worth is. And this is how you figure it out. And it's also how you figure out how to build a proactive life and decide what you want to do with your finances and your dreams and where you want to go with your money. But the first thing you got to do, guys, got to get this stuff together. You have to find it or you cannot make decisions about your money.
Exactly. So now that you've gathered all your important documentation, you found all your stuff, you feel super organized. This has taken you maybe a day to do. It might have taken you 2 weeks to gather all of this information, but you found your stuff.
And give yourself a big hug.
Seriously, that is the hardest part of financial planning and finding out where you want your future to go, like Ashley said earlier, and give yourself a pat on the back.
So congratulations. Hopefully you've gotten a jump start on finding all of your stuff. And once you do, give yourself a big pat on the back. So Jill, where do we go from here?
So if you want to get a jump start on your financial inventory planner, or you want some of the links mentioned in this podcast, be sure to check out our show notes for this episode, and also be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our newsletter. And we'll see you next week.
See you next week.